Welcome to the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and today is not Mock Draft Monday. It is actually now Tuesday. There is no Mock Draft Monday video this week because I will be spending this week catching up on my rankings updates for each of the positions: quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, running back throughout the week, as well as doing an extra video on the risers and fallers over the past month via the ADP. So ADP risers, ADP fallers. That video will come out on Saturday. Throughout the week, I will have two videos coming out Tuesday and Thursday. Part of the reason I didn't do the Mock Draft Monday video this week is I just don't want to overload your YouTube, news stream or whatever video notifications and whatnot throughout the week, because it is 5 videos. So they should be relatively shorter videos. On one Tuesday morning here, the quarterback's video. Then later on today, a wide receiver or running backs video will come out. And then on Thursday, I'll do the tight ends and the other position. And then on Saturday will come out the ADP risers and fallers. For those who are just getting back into the fantasy football season here as we approach the drafting month, end of August, early September is when most people will be drafting. If you need a refresher on last year's performances, you could check out my EV system, Equalized Value system, up on the website. There is a link down in the description below directly to that, as well as probably directly to the quarterback rankings. But back to the Equalized Value system, that is very similar to average fantasy points per week. However, it takes in consistency as part of the equation. It's not as susceptible to a huge week pushing up the average fantasy points per week, making a player look like they were more playable throughout the season on a week in and week out basis, whereas it might be 1 or 2 huge weeks that are really making that player look better than they actually performed. Also, I will put a little card. Yeah, I think this corner of the screen, you should see a little card pop up right about now that will lead you to the quarterbacks video for the top overvalued, top undervalued players from the 2022 fantasy football season. That is tied into my EV system. And I think that's just a good refresher, so that way when you are listening to other commentators on fantasy football experts talk about a player and, they performed this well last season, so that's part of why I like them, or they performed this poorly. Well, maybe they made that list and maybe you can say, yeah, but they weren't actually as bad as they looked on paper, kind of deal. That's where those videos might be a nice little refresher, as well as to last season's performances. If you have any draft strategy topics, this is the last point of order before we get into the video. If you have any draft strategy topics that you would like me to cover in the next coming month, please let me know in the comments. I will try to address any that you bring up. I have some ideas of my own. There won't be a whole lot of draft strategy videos coming up throughout the next month, as I will be starting to look at some of those typical video things, my targets, my sleepers, those kinds of videos leading up into Labor Day as the average draft positions start to get more solidified for redraft compared to best ball has definitely had an impact on those. I think more and more every season, and it takes longer for the redraft leagues to adjust. But that stuff will be coming out because drafts are coming soon. So let's move on to my update for the quarterback rankings. And here we are with, I believe these are the rankings that you would have last seen in video format for the quarterback position. And the first thing that you will see me do is that there's going to be a new tier break after Joe Burrow. And so let me update this, move everybody down a tier, and then we'll continue to go through any changes that I made. But there are no changes here with the first 6 as far as the order that they are in. Overall, the quarterback position doesn't have a whole lot of changes. I'll be right back. All right, so here we are. Everybody's moved down. Joe Burrow, Justin Fields, Lamar Jackson, all in the second tier for the quarterback position. Then we have Trevor Lawrence here, just like normal. Same with Deshaun Watson, Justin Herbert, same there. But we do have a small change coming up next with Tua Tagovailoa jumping Daniel Jones. As I've done more and more drafts, I've just realized that I had Daniel Jones a little bit too high. And we will also see Dak Prescott jumping up a tier into this, my now third tier at the very butt end of it. And the next change as we go onto tier C here will be that Trey Lance has taken a big tumble since these rankings originally came out for me. But just like for the same reasons that I originally had him up this high, and for now, we'll just move him. I think this is where he'll end up. There is a potential that he's the starting quarterback for the 49ers all season long. I think that potential is still there. However, since my rankings videos came out, it seems like that there's a less chance of that coming to fruition. And so I have factored that in. But one little news story, I'm susceptible to, I guess, off-season news here for Trey Lance and for Brock Purdy and where they will end up in the rankings. But back to this tier C, we have Geno Smith, Jared Goff, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, all in the same order as they were previously as well here. The only change that I was really close to making was putting Aaron Rodgers ahead of Jared Goff, but it was very close, so I looked at a couple of things on them, and it came down to their early season schedules. Goal number one is to make it into the playoffs, and Jared Goff has a much easier early season schedule, going up against Kansas City, Seattle, Atlanta, Green Bay, Carolina, and Tampa Bay. And according to Fantasy Pros, the only one of those matchups that really was considered was in red was the Green Bay Packers matchup. Whereas Aaron Rodgers goes up against Buffalo, Dallas, New England, Kansas City, Denver, and Philadelphia. All in all, a much tougher stretch, especially with the three red teams being Dallas, Denver, and Philadelphia. And it's easy to understand why those defenses are considered to be tough matchups coming up. So who do we expect to maybe have fewer bad games, at least to start off the season? To me, it would seem Jared Goff, given the schedules. But it's a tough one there. This whole tier, you can flip them however you want, really, and I won't argue against it too much. Then we have Jordan Love's going to slide back on this tier a fair bit. There's going to be some new guys, so I think we will place him. For now, it doesn't look like he's sliding back too far, but we are going to keep Anthony Richardson at the top of this tier, followed by Kirk Cousins, who has actually moved up a little ways, just tier rankings numbers, I think about 2 spots at this point. And then Matt Stafford with a pretty big jump up here at the 3rd spot in this tier, and another pretty big jump up. We're going to move Brock Purdy up right behind Matt Stafford. Just like with Trey Lance, Brock Purdy is very much dependent on the news as far as he can move up or down. So we'll just see what kind of news comes out for him. Then we have Jordan Love and Kyler Murray. I don't know if I moved Kyler Murray back or if I moved Bryce Young up a spot, but then we have Bryce Young up ahead of Kyler Murray now. I don't even remember specifically making that move. I don't know when it occurred in my rankings. Kyler Murray is another guy who he could end up being a great value in the drafts if you're drafting early. And as more and more news comes out leading into this season, we'll see how comfortable we are with when he'll be starting the season. I've pretty much been ranking him cautiously, like expecting him to be missing 6 weeks, but he very well could be there for week 1. So he has a wide range of outcomes as far as where he'll end up being ranked, but being cautious with him for now. Then I did not really ever move Jimmy Garoppolo specifically back in my rankings. I'm not too worried about that health situation. However, he has fallen back behind a couple of guys who'll actually be 3rd in this tier when all is said and done. I have moved Derek Carr up a few spots, felt like I had him a little bit low, so he's moved up, as well as with the recent addition to DeAndre Hopkins, Ryan Tannehill has jumped up. And part of that is because I have more faith in this offense now going forward, but also the reason that Ryan Tannehill was so far back in the rankings, and he still might have to move up a little bit more in the rankings, although we'll see about that. But the reason he was so far back is because I wasn't expecting him to be starting all season. It looked like a team who's ready to begin turning the page, something that I think they probably should have done. However, I do understand they very well could make the playoffs this season. So I understand them not doing that. It doesn't look to me like Will Levis, unless everything absolutely crumbles, and I don't expect Mike Vrabel to have a team that absolutely crumbles like they did last season. Not that they couldn't, but unless everything absolutely crumbles, it doesn't look to me like Will Levis will be starting this season. Ryan Tannehill, I think, is pretty secured with that new addition of DeAndre Hopkins. Signaled a lot of things to me about that team. Then Jimmy Garoppolo, that's where he goes here, and jumping, I guess, not ahead of, so just kind of falling behind a couple of guys. Then we have Kenny Pickett up next, and CJ Stroud up next, and Sam Howell. And this is where we will have a new tier cut off after Sam Howell, and we're going to be moving down. So Trey Lance is going to be at the top of this front tier. There we go. Mac Jones, followed by Desmond Ridder. So the order here didn't really change. And then I actually have Gardner Minshew. So we can let's just use Matt Ryan as Gardner Minshew here. And Baker Mayfield will be wrapping this tier up. And then on my website, I have a few other guys ranked, I think, in another tier. So Jacoby Brissett, Will Levis, Sam Darnold, Bailey Zappi, Kyle Trask, Taylor Heineke, all still ranked. Oh, and Colt McCoy should be wrapping this tier up. And so a couple of curiosities with who looks like Matt Ryan but is actually Gardner Minshew. I'm not 100% sold that Anthony Richardson will be the starter yet, but it's looking more and more like that's the case. But since I'm not 100% convinced of that, I am still putting Gardner Minshew up in a tier of, I guess you could say, rankable for depending on the format. And then same with Colt McCoy. That depends on the news for Kyler Murray. If he's the starter for 6 weeks, you might be an okay option for 2 quarterback leagues, flex leagues, as a third quarterback on your rosters. I would say almost definitely, especially if you really wait on that quarterback, you might get yourself a starter at least for 6 weeks if you messed up at drafting the position and missed out on all the starters, most specifically for 2 quarterback leagues. So I will post up on the screen probably right now, but you could also always jump onto the website, www.theFFForge.com, link down in the description, to check out those rankings. So those are the updates I've made. Quarterbacks, not a huge amount of updates. It's mostly some tier ranking changes. Matt Stafford definitely boosted up. Brock Purdy, another pretty big jumper and faller with Trey Lance there. And I would say Tannehill and maybe Kirk Cousins, since I did that video, might have had a couple of leaps and bounds in my thoughts on them at the very least. But, yeah, not too many changes. So thank you very much. Please like, comment, subscribe. I'll appreciate it. If you're going to let me know that you disagree with where I have someone, whether you think I should have them higher, lower, 2 guys flipped, give me an argument for it. That's very much appreciated. And if you're curious as to why I have somebody ranked where I have them ranked, then just feel free to field that question, and I will do my best to give you an answer when I have the time. Other than that, thank you very much. Peace out, and I'll just leave this up on the screen for a little bit longer